I want you to imagine a version of yourself 10 years from now. A little older, a little wiser, maybe even a little softer in the best ways. You've lit fires of confidence and creativity in the people that you lead and serve, especially the people who were once overlooked. Now, imagine that version of you walks into where you are right now and looks you in the eye and says, "Welcome to Badass Softy, a podcast for leaders who are unapologetically ambitious and want to lead with heart because you're allowed to chase big goals without losing what makes you human." I'm your host, Dr. JJ Peterson, and I am so glad that you are here today. We kicked off Badass Softy last week, so if you haven't listened to last week's episode, go back, and really it is an introduction to what this podcast is all about. It's about creating a space for people who are driven and yet also very human and don't want to play by the rules that maybe a lot of leaders have put in place of, we're kind of, just to be honest, you have to be an asshole to get ahead. And the reality is, I don't believe you have to be an asshole to be driven, but I also believe just because you're driven doesn't make you an asshole. And so that's really what this podcast is all about. And so go back and listen to last week's episode so you can hear a little bit more about what really drives this podcast. And as we started to think about how we were going to kick things off for our very first series, I wanted to walk through 3 frameworks that have really shaped who I am and how I do business over the past 10 years. See, my background is kind of in a lot of different areas. It felt for a long time that I was kind of jumping around. I was in education, so I was a professor. I taught communication. I taught leadership. I was also dean of students at a university. I actually toured and did improv comedy for a few years. I was on a few different television shows. So I kind of have done a lot of different things over my life. But really for the past 10 years, I've been focused on helping companies and individuals and leaders clarify their message, create clear marketing and messaging using the power of story. And what I discovered when I stepped into this is really it took everything that I had been doing for my whole life, whether it was communication or teaching or marketing or working in Hollywood, and kind of brought it all together and allowed me to use all of those experiences to help other people grow in their leadership and grow their business. And there were 3 frameworks that I've used and been influenced by over the past 10 years that have really driven that. And they shaped who I am, but they also shape the way that I do business and the way that I think about communication, about leadership, about marketing. And so we thought, for this first series of the podcast, first full series, let's dive into those 3 frameworks. The first one is from Donald Miller, and it's from his book, Hero on a Mission. And it really talks about the roles that we play in life: the victim, the villain, the hero, or the guide. So I'm going to dive into that one in just a second. But the first framework really is Hero on a Mission. The second framework that really has shaped everything is StoryBrand, which really takes some of those principles, storytelling principles that Don talked about in Hero on a Mission, and then begins to apply them in a whole new way to businesses and marketing. And then the third framework that really completely rocked my world and shaped the way that I approach business and leadership is Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. So those 3, Hero on a Mission, StoryBrand, and Unreasonable Hospitality, are the things that, have shaped my views in ways I can't even explain. And so I want to walk through over this first series those 3 frameworks and give you some really valuable insight and tools that might help shape the way that you communicate, the way you do business, and ultimately the way that you view life. So the first one I want to dive into, it comes from Donald Miller's book, Hero on a Mission. And what he talks about in Hero on a Mission is the idea that there are really 4 characters in every story: a victim, a villain, a hero, and a guide. The reason why these characters appear in stories is because they actually appear in us. When we understand how these different versions of ourselves show up in the day to day, it's not really about understanding what kind of role we've played, but understanding how to become a better and stronger version of ourselves and how to play what I would say is the better roles in a story. And specifically what that means is, how do we live out our lives more in the roles of being hero and guide than victim and villain? Because that's really where we discover meaning in life. So I just want to walk through what these different roles are and how we play them. Let's start with the victim. Let me be clear right off the bat is that there are real victims in life. There are people who have been victimized. And that's not really what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is playing the role of victim. Now, when it comes to playing the role of victim, sometimes being a victim, you're right to be a victim. You've actually had something happen to you that was outside of your control, that was put upon you. And you didn't imagine that. You didn't imagine the barriers. You didn't imagine the oppression. It's real. However, when we choose to live as victims, we shrink our story down to simply survival. Because the danger of the victim role is that it starts with truth. Something went wrong, something bad happened to you. But if we stay there, it ends in powerlessness. What it means is you stop dreaming, you stop innovating, you start thinking your past is more powerful than your future. You start waiting to be rescued. You start waiting for things that are outside of your control to change, and they're just not going to, because if you wait too long, life just becomes a waiting room. And that's not the story you were born to live. When we live as victims, it really pulls us out of agency. It removes us from a space of being able to do anything, because victims really are in many ways helpless. So what we need to understand is that maybe we didn't choose how this started, but I'm going to choose how it ends. Because when you reclaim agency, you begin shifting out of a victim mindset and moving away from why did this happen to me to what do I do next? Because this is the part about playing the victim that always cuts me the deepest. Someone who stays a victim or plays the victim will never write a good story. Victims only exist to further the narrative of somebody else in a story. They make the villain look bad and the hero look good. And they may get rescued, but they don't get the reward. Stories are not written about victims. And in order to write a good story, the victim must begin to overcome. In my own life, I've seen this happen too often. It's when I begin to play the victim role, I'm not living out a good story. My favorite stories that when I tell at a party, it crushes. I'll just tell you that. It's an incredible story about the time that I was a dancer in a Missy Elliott music video. And I know you're looking at me and you go, well, of course, he was in a rap video. And the reality is, no, I did not belong there, but I got cast as a dancer in a Missy Elliott music video. In the casting process, what happened was I showed up and I had to dance on a Dance Dance Revolution mat. And I ended up dancing next to Missy Elliott. And she and I are the same height, by the way, which is probably why I got the part. But I also danced my butt off and I had a lot of fun with it. And they ended up casting me in the video. So I was so excited about being in this video. And I told everybody that I was going to be in a Missy Elliott music video. It actually was going to be the first 3D music video ever produced. There was going to be a big premiere on TRL. That tells you how long ago it was, because I was on TRL. And it was going to be this big thing. And I told everybody. My mom got so excited. She went around and told everybody I was going to be in a Melissa Etheridge video, which was very different mother. So I was so excited. Well, I show up on set and I get there and I walk up to security and I say, "Hi, I'm JJ. I'm here. I'm the Dance Dance Revolution guy." And he goes, "Oh, Fat Michael Jackson." And I go, I'm sorry. And he goes, "Yeah, you're Fat Michael Jackson." And I said, "No, no, I'm not. I'm the Dance Dance Revolution guy." And he's like, "Yeah, somebody was supposed to call you to tell you to learn the moonwalk because you're going to be on Dance Dance Revolution, but you're as Fat Michael Jackson." And I was like, "What?" I'm so confused. So he's calling everybody up on the radio and going, "Fat Michael Jackson's here. He doesn't think he's Fat Michael Jackson. Should we get Fat Michael Jackson into makeup? Let's get Fat Michael Jackson into wardrobe. Where's Fat Michael Jackson?" So they just kept calling me Fat Michael Jackson over and over and over again. So I go up to my dressing room and I end up going down to get fitted for my costume for the video. And they hand me a pair of black high water pants and they made some silver socks for me. And then a white shirt. Now the white shirt they gave me was medium. And maybe some of you are watching this on YouTube and you can clearly tell I am not a medium. But let me just say, I haven't been a medium since I was in junior high. And so it was a crop top on me. And they hand me this medium shirt. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a double X. This is not going to fit me." And he goes, "Oh, it's not supposed to. We want your belly to hang out. In fact, we're not even going to show your face. We're just showing your belly. They want it to jiggle all over the place while you're dancing." And I immediately felt sick to my stomach because I began to realize I wasn't like a part of the joke. I was the joke. And so I grab my clothes and I go back to my dressing room and I fell apart. I just felt sick to my stomach. I was like, do I call my agent and tell them I'm quitting? I've told everybody I'm in this video. Now everybody's not even going to see my face. They're just going to see my belly. What was happening in that moment is something had happened to me, right? There was truth in the fact that I was surprised by this. This was not what I had planned. All of a sudden, I'm the butt of the joke. It's very embarrassing and awkward. And I began to go into victim mode. And I was ready to quit. I was ready to walk out of there at that moment. If that's where the story ended, that I walked off that set, that's not a good story. So I needed to figure out how to change the narrative. Spoiler. We'll get to it in a minute. Before we get to that, let's talk about the villain. Nobody wants to admit that they play the villain, but I have, and you probably have too. The villain shows up when we get scared or bitter or tired of waiting. And we begin to think, well, if I can't win, then nobody can. And so we scoff at someone else's passion or success. The reality is, villains are just victims who gave up on healing. They decided at one point that it's safer to just hurt others than to risk getting hurt again. And there was a piece of me in that room where I wanted to lash out at my agent. I wanted to lash out at Missy Elliott's people and be like, I'm going to burn this place down. If you are going to hurt me, I am going to hurt you. And there was a moment where I wanted to go after them and tell them why they had wronged me in a way that made them feel my pain. That's what villains do. Because this actually helped me understand villains a little bit better. You need to understand something about villains. Villains have a backstory of pain, which is why a lot of times when you see a villain in a movie, they have a scar, which shows you that they've been through something, right? But the reality is, villains are victims who choose to revenge the pain by causing more pain to other people. They've given up on their healing. So if you've ever had a moment where maybe somebody else got some recognition that maybe you felt like you deserved, and you tried to diminish their prize or their accomplishment to other people, that's a villain mentality. That's a villain move. Or maybe you've attacked. Somebody's attacking you, so you attack back. That's a villain move. Villains experience pain, but then try to turn around and make others smaller and feel pain as well. But what happens to a villain in the story? People root for villains to be defeated. In fact, villains should die in a story. We want villains to die. So when you choose to become a villain, not only are you causing pain for other people, but the reality is people are rooting against you. They want you, maybe not always to die, but they want you to be defeated. Stories never end well for villains. In the long run, the arc of a villain story is always defeat. But if you have ever been or find yourself sometimes playing the villain, you're not broken. You're just at a crossroads. You get to choose. Do I let the pain that I've experienced turn me bitter and cause pain for others, or do I let it make me brave? And do I actually move to redeem the pain? Because when you choose to actually redeem the pain, you move into another kind of role. That's the role of the hero. Villains revenge pain. Heroes redeem it. So now let's talk about the hero. This is where the story starts to shift. Heroes in stories, they aren't perfect. They're not fearless. They don't have it all figured out. In fact, heroes are usually the ones who are the least prepared. Heroes' power doesn't come from knowing it all. It comes from choosing a way to move forward in light of not knowing, in light of the pain. We think of heroes as strong, but really think about heroes in a movie. At any point in a movie, you could pause the movie and see the hero is beat up, they're alone, maybe they're trapped, they're overwhelmed. Heroes are not strong. Heroes in stories are actually weak through the whole story. They are beat up and overwhelmed. But here's the thing, is that they don't quit. That is the hero's journey. So that's the difference when we talk about the crossroads that victims come to. Heroes have bad things happen to them. They are victims of circumstances, of other people's actions. Villains choose to revenge that pain, and heroes choose to redeem it. And what's crazy is throughout a story, both the villain and the hero have multiple times during the story to be able to make a different choice. The hero, all throughout, at every single step of the journey, has the ability to stop, give up, cause pain for other people, or choose to keep going forward and redeem the pain they've experienced. Villains also, all along the way, they have a choice to stop causing pain and have the ability to move into a hero role. In fact, you hear, like a lot of times in movies, victims and heroes going, "You don't have to do this." They say that to the villain. "You don't have to do this. You can do something different." The villain always has a choice, but always chooses evil. The hero, same thing. You don't have to do this. You can give up at any moment, and yet they always choose to move forward. That's the hero, not because it's easy, but because they choose to continue to move forward in light of the pain, in light of the struggle. Heroes act before they feel ready. They keep going. They don't wait to be invited. They create space. And I know some of you are wondering right now, am I really a hero? And I would say yes. If you're still here and you haven't given up and you keep showing up in the midst of heartache and struggle, you are a hero. The hero always decides to live with meaning. The hero takes responsibility for the story, and they say, this might not be easy, but it will be worth it. So there I was, sitting in the dressing room for the Missy Elliott music video. In many ways, I felt very broken in that moment. I felt sorry for myself. I was really struggling, and I was bouncing back and forth between the victim and the villain mentality. I was feeling pain. Things were outside of my control. And I was also wanting to cause other people pain in this process. I'm going to ruin this video. Not really, but that's kind of some of the thoughts that were going on in my head. And this went on. I'd love to tell you that happened for about 5 minutes. But the reality is I paced in that dressing room for about 2 hours, waiting for them to call me and just getting more and more pissed and more sad and more hurt and trying to figure out what I was going to do. And mostly it was just give up, just leave. Ultimately, as I was sitting there, I gathered my thoughts and I began to realize this honestly is an opportunity of a lifetime. How many other rap videos are you going to be in? And I said, okay, I'm going to do this no matter what, no matter how this turns out, I'm going to do this. And so I looked at that man in the mirror and I said, it's time to make a change. And I decided I am going to be the best fat Michael Jackson that this world has ever seen. And so I put on my high water pants and I put on my medium crop top shirt and I went downstairs because Missy had to approve the outfit. And I see Missy and I start dancing in front of her and every part of me is shaking and everybody can see it. And everybody's kind of laughing and Missy's laughing. She's like, oh, that's great. That's great. That's great. So I turn around and, I did the kind of classic movie thing of like, I'm smiling at Missy and then I turn around and my face just drops. And I'm like, okay, we're doing this. And I'm walking away and I hear Missy go, hold up. I like his face. His face is funny, which is the sweetest words I've ever heard. And I turn around and she goes, I want to see his face on camera, which means now the outfit doesn't work. And so she goes, give him a bigger shirt. So they ended up giving me a bigger shirt and I went down and I ended up dancing for about 45 minutes. You'll see about 3 seconds of it in the video, but for about 45 minutes to an hour, I am competing against Missy Elliott in Dance Dance Revolution in the first 3D music video that was ever created, all because I decided in that moment not to play the victim, but to actually move forward and redeem the opportunity that had been given to me. And in life, when heroes keep choosing long enough, when they keep working to redeem the pain and overcome it and ultimately win the day, they become something even more powerful, which really is the strongest character in the story. Heroes become the guide. The guide is really Obi-Wan Kenobi, Yoda, Haymitch in Hunger Games, Gandalf, Dumbledore, Aslan. It's the older, wiser wizard, mystic coach who comes along and helps the hero win. And the reason why they get to be the guide is because they no longer have to prove anything. They've already won what they needed to win. They've already been through the hero's journey and they don't need to prove anything. They are there to help other people win. The guide really is helping the hero or someone else believe in themselves. The hero often wants to say, I made it, but the guide actually says, you can make it too. Every time you show up authentically and help someone else navigate their storm, specifically a storm that you've already been through, you become a guide. And we need more guides, especially ones like you, the ones who know what it's like to fight to build something from what little you had, the ones who overcome hard circumstances, who have built something beautiful and are leading teams and leading a business. We don't need more TED Talks. We don't need more awards. We need people who stand in front of others and say, come with me. I get it. I've been there and I'm going to show you the way. My favorite part about being a guide is they're not the main characters of the story anymore, but they are the strongest. Guides have already lived a great story, and now they are all about helping others do the same. That's really what has empowered me to live my life in a whole new way. I work to be a guide. I work to help others overcome the problems and the struggle that I have been through already. In my life, there are still moments, if I'm most honest with you, I still play the victim at times. In fact, I still play the villain at times. And when I lean into the hero role, I'm actually trying to live a better story for myself, which isn't bad either. I'm actually trying to write a good story with my life. But if I'm most honest, the place that I really want to be, it's not about just living my own good story. It's about mentoring and helping other people live a great story with their life. All right, let's pause here for a second. I just want us to do a quick exercise. I want you to imagine a version of yourself 10 years from now. A little older, a little wiser, maybe even a little softer in the best ways. This version of you has shaped not only your life, but it has shaped others' lives. You've lit fires of confidence and creativity in the people that you lead and serve, especially the people who were once overlooked. You are mentoring people that are coming back and thanking you for everything that you've done. Now, imagine that version of you walks into where you are right now and looks you in the eye and says, keep going. Don't stop. You are becoming me. Because you are. You are already on your way every single time that you show up and make the choice to become a hero or a guide. You are becoming something new. So here's where we land. Even though you and I have both experienced hardships, we are not victims, not anymore. And even though we've gone through pain, we don't need to become a villain to survive. We are already heroes. And if we keep going, we become guides. That is a good story. And let me tell you something that I deeply, deeply believe. The world is desperate for better stories, and the best ones are written by people who are just like you. Anytime that things get overwhelming, anytime that somebody from the outside is oppressing you or putting something on you that is causing pain, ask yourself this question. What would the hero do next? Not give up, not lash out, but look for the redemptive moment in the pain and then turn around and help someone else find that same redemption. And don't stop, because the story you're writing is a story that matters. You are building a life people will be inspired by. You are the plot twist that somebody in your life has been waiting for. So that's Hero on a Mission. That really is what has inspired me and changed me. And my hope is that there are some things in there that you can learn from and think about in your own life. And so I want to just close our time out together with a little bit of a blessing, a toast. May you never stay long in the role of the victim, but rise with the strength to rewrite the story. May you leave behind any bitterness of a villain and let your pain become purpose. May you rise each day like a hero, braver than the day before. And may you grow into your guide, rooted in wisdom, rich in compassion, and ready to lift up others as you climb. Thank you for writing your story, and thank you for helping others write theirs. Thanks for listening. Follow and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. BadassSofty.com is crafted by Fruitful Design and Strategy.